My grandparents, my true home. Every morning, it was the same routine. As my dad dropped me off at my grandparents' house, he'd jingle his keys and say, "She's all yours." My grandparents' place quickly became my real home, a haven where I felt genuinely loved and wanted. They made sure I was fed, picked me up from school, helped with homework, and took me to the park. My grandfather, a retired math professor, spent hours teaching me about numbers and problem solving. "Numbers never lie," he'd say. "They tell stories, more honest than people do." These lessons unexpectedly shaped my future career choices. Every afternoon, my grandmother, a former high school teacher, patiently helped me with schoolwork, ensuring I understood every concept. Her patience was boundless. "Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take away from you," she'd tell me firmly, yet kindly. She also taught me to cook, not as a chore, but as a way to express creativity and love. Those afternoons in their kitchen, reviewing my day and learning to measure ingredients precisely, became some of my most cherished memories. My parents, often exhausted and irritable from the drive, would arrive late at night to pick me up. "Madison, you're the best thing that ever happened to us," my grandmother would say as she hugged me goodbye. In her embrace, I could almost forget that I wasn't wanted anywhere else. My grandparents were my emotional rock, providing the stability and affection so noticeably absent at home. My grandfather often added, "Remember, sometimes the best things in life aren't planned." At my own house, I learned to exist as an afterthought. The unseen daughter, my sister Emily, was getting ready for her promising future and simply pretended I didn't exist. She wasn't mean. She'd just be on the couch, talking on the phone about boys and college applications, completely oblivious to me playing with my dolls in our shared living room. The difference in how my parents treated us was stark and consistent. I'd hear my mother proudly tell family and friends about Emily's achievements. "Emily got straight A's again." Or, "Emily made the debate team." Or, "Emily got into her dream college." They attended all her school functions, science fairs, and debate contests. For my events, their excuses were always the same. "We're too tired," "We have to work," or "You understand, don't you?" My grandparents, however, were my biggest cheerleaders, attending every single one of my school functions with joy and genuine pride. When Emily left for college, I hoped things at home would change. I was the daughter who stayed. Maybe now my parents would finally see me. I was completely wrong. At 14, I went from being invisible to being the housekeeper. "Madison!" my mother would call out before I even took off my backpack. "The house needs cleaning." Start with the bathrooms. I took on Emily's chores, plus many new ones. I learned the washing machine settings by heart. It became my daily companion. Cleaning, cooking, and maintaining a home for parents who barely acknowledged my existence felt like a never-ending cycle of housework. If I hesitated, my father would remark, "You live here. You need to contribute. Your sister always did her part." My culinary career began abruptly when I was 14. One day, my mother simply stopped making dinner. "You're old enough now," she declared. One morning, "We expect dinner ready when we get home from work." Despite my taxing domestic responsibilities, I maintained excellent grades. My teachers noticed my aptitude for economics and mathematics, encouraging me to compete in academic events. My grandfather spent extra time teaching me complex concepts far beyond my grade level. "You have a gift with numbers," he'd exclaim, his eyes shining with pride. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." A future unplanned, dreaming about college was my only escape. Every night after doing the dishes, I'd retreat to my room and pore over university websites, imagining myself on distant campuses, far from endless chores and the chilly silence of my home. My hard work paid off. Despite my household duties, I maintained straight A's. At 16, I received acceptance letters from several prestigious colleges, including some known for their top finance programs. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Emily burst through the front door, pulling a tall, smartly dressed man with her. "Mom, Dad, this is James. We're getting married," she shrieked. My mother sobbed with happiness, and my father immediately pulled out his phone to call family. My parents literally sprang from their seats. "We'll cover everything," my mother exclaimed, hugging Emily. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect." For months, our home revolved around wedding preparations. Every conversation centered on guest lists, venues, and flowers. Money seemed to flow like water for expensive outfits, high-end vendors, and top-tier everything. My grandparents attended the wedding, but they didn't seem to enjoy the extravagant display. My grandfather just shook his head at the champagne fountain, and I saw my grandmother scowl at a sculpture that probably cost more than a semester of college tuition. They likely already knew what was coming, so they kept their opinions to themselves. On the day my acceptance letters arrived, I sat at our dinner table, 3 envelopes spread before me, my heart pounding. "That's nice," my mother murmured without looking up from her meal, "but we can't pay for it." "We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding, even took out a loan for it. There's nothing left for college." "But you paid for Emily's college," I stammered, barely above a whisper. "That was different," my mother said condescendingly. "We saw potential in her." The silence that followed was deafening. "You should get a job, save up some money, and take out student loans," my father interjected. "That's what responsible adults do." A new beginning. I had never dared to leave the table without being excused before. Grabbing my phone with trembling hands, I called my grandmother. Minutes later, I was crying as I entered their familiar front door. As he listened to my story, my grandfather's expression hardened, but I couldn't quite read the sparkle in his eyes. After I finished, they exchanged a knowing glance. My grandfather took my hand. "Madison, we've been saving for your education since the day you were born. We've been expecting something like this." He returned from his study with a folder containing bank statements showing years of meticulous saving. "You can choose any of those universities. We've got you covered." That evening, I packed my necessities and moved in with my grandparents. When I told my parents I was leaving, they were downstairs watching TV and barely looked up. "Whatever you think is best," my mother said, her gaze fixed on the screen. Did I hear the relief in her voice? The years that followed were transformative. I enrolled in a top business school to study financial analysis. Perhaps witnessing my parents' poor financial management fueled my passion for doing things correctly. My professors quickly noticed my zeal and innate financial skills. Before long, I was staying after class to discuss complex financial ideas. For the first time, someone other than my grandparents saw real potential in me. I secured prestigious internships at major financial institutions during college. Every summer brought new opportunities and challenges. During my performance review at Morgan Stanley, my supervisor said, "You've got a natural instinct for this. We'd love to have you back next summer." Except for calls with my grandparents, I kept my head down, focused on school, and rarely thought about my family. After graduation, I was hired by one of the city's leading financial firms, earning a starting salary I never would have imagined. I found a small, clean, secure one-bedroom apartment. Every morning I was grateful I didn't have to make breakfast for anyone but myself. My career took off as I poured myself into every new challenge, receiving bonuses and promotions I could only have dreamed of as a child. Within 5 years, I advanced to a senior role, overseeing intricate portfolios and fostering significant client relationships. I became known in the industry for my strategic thinking and analytical accuracy. Every accomplishment felt like a subtle affirmation that my parents had misjudged my abilities. The reckoning. Meanwhile, through occasional chats with my grandparents, I learned that Emily's marketing career wasn't going as planned, and her husband, James, struggled to hold down a job. "They're always begging your parents for money," my grandma told me in one of our weekly conversations. "Your mother emptied her retirement account last month to help them with rent. They just can't say no to her." A year later, things worsened. Even with my parents' help, Emily and James couldn't pay their rent. They moved back into my old bedroom with their 7-year-old twins. My parents, who had once been so proud of Emily's abilities, now had to support her entire family, in addition to their golden child. I kept my distance, focusing on building my own life and career. Every bonus, promotion, and successful transaction served as a quiet confirmation that I wasn't the failure my parents had predicted. By my mid-30s, I had substantial investments and enough money for a down payment on my own home. Then, everything changed. My grandfather died unexpectedly from a severe heart attack. It was a tragic loss. He was the father figure who supported me when no one else did. My grandmother, who had spent over 50 years with him, seemed to lose her spark and followed him less than 2 months later. In every significant sense, they had been my true parents, and suddenly, they were gone. As I was arranging my grandmother's funeral, I heard my mother's voice behind me at the funeral home. "Madison, do you want some help with the arrangements?" I turned to see her, looking older and more worn out than I remembered. A part of me wanted to tell her to leave, but her face stopped me. "Sure," I said to myself. "That would be nice." Over the next few days, as we prepared the service, my parents began to open up. They admitted they were struggling. One afternoon, while choosing flowers, my father confessed, "We haven't been financially well off since retirement." He went on, "We barely make ends meet," before mentioning Emily's twins. I realized my sister and her family were still living with them, relying on their diminishing income. A week after we buried my grandma, we gathered in a wood-paneled office for the reading of the will. Emily and James slumped in recliners next to my parents, while I sat opposite them. The tension was thick, and the room smelled of furniture polish and old papers. None of us realized it then, but what followed would set off a series of events that would permanently alter our family relationships. After adjusting his glasses, Mr. Patterson, the notary, began reading in a monotone. I expected standard legal jargon, but what followed made everyone take notice. "To our beloved granddaughter, Madison, we leave our house at 1542 Maple Street and the sum of $150,000. The ensuing hush was deafening. My mother tightened her grip on my father's arm until her knuckles turned white and Emily's mouth dropped open. Clearing his throat, Mr. Patterson continued. He glanced at my mother. "And a personal note from Mr. Henderson to his daughter, Margaret." The message said, "Remember, Margaret, that we provided you with $200,000 just when you needed it most. As we respected your needs back then, we expect you will respect our final decision." My mother's cheeks flushed red, then turned pale. Emily and James looked at each other anxiously, while my father gazed at the floor. The confrontation in the parking lot, after the notary had finished and collected his paperwork, my parents approached me. Something desperate had replaced the calm they'd shown during the funeral preparations. "Madison, honey," my mother said with a shaky voice, "you must realize that we always assumed we would inherit the house. We're having trouble, but we were depending on it. The mortgage, Emily's family's expenses. We could really use the house." My father continued, stroking his gray hair, talking about how Emily's kids wanted a yard to play in. Emily also joined in. However, I just got into my car and left. Over the next few weeks, I kept thinking about my grandparents' parting gift. My life was well established near the city, and while the inherited house held many priceless memories, it was too large for me alone. Meanwhile, I learned about my parents' growing financial difficulties from our weekly chats. Helping Emily and her family had drained their retirement funds, and they were finding it increasingly difficult to pay their own mortgage. I gave it a lot of thought before deciding, I would purchase my parents a better house, one that was single-story, had a lovely garden, but was easier to maintain, something cozy for their retirement years, using money from the sale of my grandparents' house and my own savings. I was shocked by their response when I shared my idea. They actually started crying with happiness. After several weeks of house hunting, we finally found the ideal location. A stunning ranch-style house with wide doorways and no stairs in a peaceful neighborhood. My folks couldn't stop gushing about how thrilled they were after the purchase was finalized. "A proper housewarming party is what we need," my dad said. "It's the least we can do to make all the arrangements." "That would be beautiful," I said, intending to show them the deed at the festivities. "Tell me when, please." Weeks went by. Despite having a lot of work to do, I kept expecting an invitation. "Oh, honey," my mom would say, "we're still planning. You know these things take time." My father would also say, "We want it to be perfect. We'll notify you shortly." Their evasive answers annoyed me for some reason. One evening, after another evasive phone call from my mother, I typed Emily's name into Facebook. We weren't connected on any social media, and I hadn't seen her page in years. Just hours ago, it was posted, "I can't wait for this Saturday's housewarming party for Mom and Dad. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone in this beautiful residence." Numerous friends and family members confirmed their attendance in scores of comments. Pictures showed caterers being hired and decorations being set up. This was hardly an impromptu get-together. Weeks had been spent organizing it. With slightly trembling fingers, I called my mother. "Hello, Mom. I wanted to inquire further about the housewarming party. Do you have a date in mind yet?" "Oh, honey, not just yet," she said with ease. "Most likely in a few weeks. The specifics are still being worked out." Everyone except me, apparently. As that Saturday drew near, I had to make a choice. Should I go to them? Should I just let it go? How could they exclude me from the festivities after everything that had transpired after I had purchased this house? I would eventually find out, but not in the manner I had anticipated. On Saturday, I parked a block from the house I had purchased for my parents. Through the windows, I could see dozens of people mingling, including Emily's social circle, friends, and relatives. My father offered tours of the house I bought, while my mother, dressed in her special occasion pearls, welcomed guests at the entrance. Twinkling lights and welcome banners adorned the mansion. Laughter and music poured onto the street. It was obvious they had spent weeks organizing this housewarming celebration to which I was not invited. For a while, I sat in my car and watched. Emily's twins chase each other past crowds of adults who were doting on them. Through the wide bay window, I could see moving boxes with Emily's handwriting on them, stacked in the corner. The process of relocating her family's possessions had already begun. I inhaled deeply before sneaking in through the side door. The aroma of flowers and catered cuisine filled the house. I followed my father's voice and found him speaking to a gathering of people in the living room. "After all these years of hard work, we finally did it. Bought our dream home." My mother excitedly added, "Don't forget about Emily. She helped so much with the down payment." Such a wonderful daughter, always thinking about family first, unlike some people. She went on, in response to a question about me. "Our younger daughter hasn't helped us at all, too busy with her career to care about family." Heat sprang to my face as I stood in the doorway. "Actually, I think you've got that backwards," I said. Everyone jumped, and a dead silence filled the room. My dad was the first to recover, grinning tightly. "Madison, what a surprise! Especially since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party for..." "The house I bought," I said as I entered the room. The quiet grew longer. Emily's husband quickly peered over his shoes, asking why everyone seemed so distressed. One of the twins pulled at Emily's sleeve. "You bought it, yes, but it's ours now. You can't expect eternal gratitude," my mother said with a hint of abrasiveness. With heads nodding around him, my father added, "That's right. And frankly, you're not welcome here. This is a family gathering, and Emily and her family will be living here too." my mom said. They've already sold their house. It's all arranged. The twins need a stable home. I extracted a folder from my bag. You seem to be confused about something, I remarked, holding out the ownership and deed documents. This house belongs to me. I never signed it over to you. The color of my mother's face changed from pale to ashen. My father began to ramble on about his responsibilities to his family. Emily's self-assured grin broke when she realized her plans were failing. Despite my shaking palms, I continued. I was planning to give it to you tonight. Maintaining a firm voice, I said, I thought this could be a fresh start for all of us. Instead, you've shown me nothing has changed. You can't do this! My mother's voice became a screech. We're your parents, no! I said softly. You're just the people who gave birth to me. My real parents, my grandparents, taught me that family means more than blood. They also taught me about finances, which is why I own this house and you don't. I turned to speak to the astonished visitors. I'm sorry, but this party is over. This is my house, and I'm asking everyone to leave. My parents, Emily, James, the twins, and all their guests departed in tears. From the porch, I watched them drive off one by one until the street was deserted. In the yard, the ornamental lights continued to sparkle mockingly. Inside, half-empty drinks and discarded food plates covered every surface. The house, which was supposed to be my gift of reconciliation, ended up being the last straw in our relationship. A few weeks later, I found out that they had purchased an apartment using the proceeds from the sale of their previous home. 3 generations crowded into a 2-person apartment when Emily, James, and the twins moved in with them. They tried calling me all the time at first. Their voicemails varied between angry accusations. You've become so heartless, just like your grandparents warned us you would. And guilt-tripping. How could you do this to your own family? I blocked their social media accounts, emails, and phone numbers as a reminder of everything that went wrong in our family. The house is now empty. I have an appointment with a real estate agent tomorrow. It's not worth trying to cure everything. Like old photos in a dusty album, some relationships are better left in the past. When I eventually have kids of my own, I've made a promise to myself that they won't ever need to win my affection or vie for my attention. Unlike my parents, I will love my kids just as much and without conditions, just as my grandparents loved me. Every heartbreaking reality about my family was exposed that Saturday night. I had not been invited to the housewarming celebration my parents were throwing. When I arrived at the house I had purchased, dozens of visitors, catered food, and most telling of all, moving boxes with Emily's handwriting strewn around, were all visible through the windows. My father proudly declared, after all our hard work, we finally bought our dream home. In her comments, my mother praised Emily for allegedly helping with the down payment. She dismissed inquiries about my absence by saying, "Oh, Madison's too focused on her career to care about family." The incident encapsulated every insult I had experienced as a youngster, every instance of favoritism toward Emily, and every instance in which I had been regarded as an afterthought. I had never before experienced such clarity as I stood in the doorway, witnessing my parents rewrite history by preparing to relocate my sister's family onto my land without even asking me. Actually, I said, causing the room to quiet down, I believe there was a miscommunication regarding the buyer of this house. I could tell everything I needed to know about their actual emotions from the expressions on their faces. Amazement, humiliation, and then indignation. My mother was the first to recover, her voice piercing with a sense of entitlement. What's done is done. The house is ours now, and Emily's family needs the space. I took out the ownership documents and the property deed. No, the house is mine. I never transferred ownership to you. I was planning to give it to you tonight, but clearly that would be a mistake. You can't do this, my mother said in a terrified tone. We're your parents. We have rights. The only rights you have, I said quietly, are the ones I choose to give you. And right now, I'm choosing to ask everyone to leave my property. Following that, there was a frantic evacuation, with guests rushing out with plates of food still in hand, Emily's twins sobbing in bewilderment, and my father trying to maintain some dignity while guiding people to their cars. "How could you do this to your own family?" was my mother's final attempt at manipulation, but it failed against my newfound determination. The 5 of them were crowded into a tiny apartment in the weeks that followed. The messages began right away. My father demanded a re-examination. Emily begged with tears for her children's stability, and my mother accused me of cruelty. They were all blocked by me. The vacant house served as a reminder of what might have been, a new beginning, an opportunity for peacemaking. Instead, it served as the impetus for my ultimate separation from a family that had never fully embraced me. A month later, I sold it and used the money to fund my own future. Some asked if I would ever try to mend those bridges or forgive them. However, I came to understand that forgiving does not always entail letting harmful people return to your life. Forgiving oneself for leaving can be necessary at times. Before putting away the old wedding picture of my parents, I promised my future children that they would never experience the anguish of conditional love, the hurt of being compared to a sibling, or doubt their position in the family. With me, the cycle of partiality and emotional blackmail would come to a stop. When I last drove by my parents' apartment complex, Emily's twins were playing in the tiny courtyard. I briefly experienced sadness, but it was for the relationships that never truly existed in the first place, not for the ones I had lost. My grandparents taught me that a true family is based on love, respect, and support for one another, despite the belief that blood is thicker than water. I take their lessons with me as I start this new phase of my life. Love ought to be freely given rather than demanded. Family is more than just genetics. Walking away is sometimes the healthiest course of action. I didn't open my mother's last unread email, so I erased it. Any defenses or charges it included were no longer relevant. At last, I had discovered how to put my own value ahead of their conditional approval. Their kind of familial devotion has no place in the life I'm creating now. New opportunities await us in the future, free from the burden of attempting to win affection from those who are unable to freely give it. I learned what true family looks like from my grandparents. I'll build that kind of family for myself someday, one based on mutual respect, unconditional love, and the knowledge that each individual is equally important. At long last, the chapter of being the family afterthought is over. Being the author of my own life is only the beginning of my journey.